So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a program offered in partnership between NAMI Greater Cleveland and Thrive Peer Recovery Resources. My name is Matt Kosecki, and I am the Community Outreach and Education Coordinator with NAMI Greater Cleveland. Today's program is on the topic of what peers want you to know about mental health and recovery. We're happy to offer this program in conjunction with Mental Illness Awareness Week, which is this week. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the NAMI Greater Cleveland YouTube channel later this week for your viewing. Please use the chat feature if you have questions. We do have time allocated in this program for Q&A from the audience at the end, but I will also be, as moderator, asking questions of our three panelists who are all peer supporters with Thrive Peer Recovery Services. I want to share a little bit about NAMI Greater Cleveland for those of you that are new to us, and then I'm also going to allow Justin Larson to speak about Thrive before we get started. So NAMI Greater Cleveland is a local affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. NAMI is a grassroots organization that was founded in 1979 in Wisconsin by a group of mothers of children with mental illness. And they formed NAMI as a grassroots coalition around their kitchen tables because they really experienced a lack of understanding and support in their local communities around the reality of living with mental illness. And since then, NAMI has become the largest grassroots mental health organization of its kind and is represented by state or local affiliates in all 50 states. Our mission at NAMI Greater Cleveland, we serve Cuyahoga County, and our work is dedicated to improving quality of life for individuals with mental illness and their families. And we do that by providing education, support, information and referral, and advocacy. We offer support groups for peers, support groups for families, educational programs for peers and for families. We have a helpline that's available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, that can provide information about accessing services related to mental health and substance use, as well as other community resources that may be supportive for a person living with a mental health condition. And we also support advocacy in the sense of educating our communities about mental illness, raising awareness, reducing the stigma around mental health, which is one of the things we'll be talking about in today's program. NAMI is very involved nationally in research and in legislative advocacy to make mental health a public health priority, and also to just support our local communities on the ground, realizing that if they have a mental health condition, they're not alone. And that will also be hopefully a key takeaway from today's program, in which you will get to hear three peer supporters share their personal stories of living with mental health conditions and their stories of recovery, as well as answering questions about issues related to peer support, stigma, self-care, and what they feel it is most important for professionals such as nurses, other healthcare providers, teachers, therapists, to know about what it's like to live with mental illness, and also to answer the same question for families and loved ones. So with that being said, I will hand it off to Justin to speak about Thrive, and we will then have Julie, followed by Rondé, and then Justin share their personal stories. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, everybody. My name is Justin Larson. I am the Director of Health Systems at Thrive Peer Recovery Services. First off, I just want to thank everybody for this opportunity. Thank everybody for the work that they do in behavioral health and the mental health area. I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that you do, because it doesn't go unnoticed. We're all in this together. So I really appreciate this opportunity. And I'm going to share a little bit about our organization, Thrive Peer Recovery Services. So we are the largest provider of peer support services in the state of Ohio. It was formed back in May of 2018 as a combination of Thrive Behavioral Health and then Live Peer Support. It was taking place at Metro Health, and that was under a company called Ascent. So they formed, and we have Thrive Peer Recovery Services. We have grown quite a bit. We started out with 6 folks, and now we are at about 175 and growing. And one of the really cool things is 90% of us are folks in recovery ourselves. Personally, I've worked in a lot of different places for different agencies. I've worked in treatment centers, everything from transportation to being a counselor. Peer recovery support is near and dear to my heart. Being a person in recovery and getting to help out others with my lived experience. So it's really, really cool for me to work in a company with the environment that we do have. It really supports my recovery. So I'm super blessed to be able to do what I get to do today. We are contracted with Medicaid and all MCOs and certified by the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services to provide mental health peer support and substance use disorder peer support. Thrive is now in network with Anthem commercial insurance and seeking other commercial insurances as well to provide those peer support services. We currently provide peer support to individuals in all 88 Ohio counties through a combination of in-person services and or telehealth services. We support people on their journey and enable them to achieve independence and long-term recovery. That's kind of the goal of peer recovery support. We strive to be the gold standard of evidence-based peer support recovery and comprehensive continuing care. We utilize any pathways, the any pathways approach to recovery. It's not one size fits all. I think a lot of us on this call know that. So we just encourage individuals struggling with behavioral health and or substance use disorders to stay engaged in recovery. Simply put, we're a bunch of folks in recovery that are trying to assist others to achieve their own recovery goals. That's about it for me on that. And I'll turn it over to Matt or Julie.
Yeah, Julie, take it. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Well, I just want to echo what Justin said and thank everyone so much for being here today and listening a little bit about us and Thrive, and hopefully something that we say, will be able to help you, and we're open to questions even after this. So I am the State Relations Coordinator with Thrive Peer Recovery Services. I'm also a person that's in long-term recovery and a certified peer recovery supporter. My story started mainly with unaddressed mental health issues that were just, I feel like in a time where it was like, you just deal with it and you have anxiety, everybody has anxiety, that's fine. And, the anxiety kind of led to an eating disorder of sorts. And, I battled with that in high school, but I had good family support. So I kind of always heard, you have a good family, you come from a good background, you're fine, just, make the right decisions, do the right things, and, everything will be okay. Probably my senior year of high school, my father passed away. I had a high school graduation, my father passed away, in a long-term relationship, long-term for high school, ended, and it was a very abusive, verbally abusive, not physically abusive relationship. But I just had no clue, there wasn't a lot of talk of warning signs or what to look for. So, a family member actually called a doctor and I was prescribed Xanax for the first time. So I started taking those just a little bit and then stopped. But I was like, well, this is great. I don't really have to think or feel or cry, and I don't like to share my feelings. So, this is good. And then I started experimenting with drinking in college, Ohio State, and I did some at Columbus State, some classes, and probably like my freshman year, beginning like a freshman year of college, I found out that I was pregnant, which was completely unacceptable by the standards of where I came from, and to be unmarried and, you know, in this situation and at a young age. So more stress, of course, you know, more anxiety. You know, what am I going to do with this child? I was, I believe, immature in a lot of ways, but very naive to the ways of the world. I was very sheltered, grew up in the church, so I just had no clue what was out there. When I had my son, that's really when a lot of the deeper seated issues, I believe, began, because I had a couple of those unaddressed, unresolved issues. And just to tack onto that, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. It was weird because I was almost just set on a path of destruction of myself. The first few months were great, and then it was just like, how can I, unintentionally, how can I destroy everything in my life? So I began experimenting after I had my son with opiates, because I was prescribed them, but I didn't really take them when I was prescribed. So again, mask the pain. I could take the emotional pain, essentially, I could take those. It was, helping. I kind of spiraled out of control, but I was incarcerated for a short period of time. And then I got out, and I did really well for almost 5 years. I did address some of my issues. I went to a CBCF program. I'm a huge advocate for those. It's more behavioral, address some of your mental health issues. I was given the tools, but I just still was not honest with anyone else or myself. So on a long-term abusive relationship I entered into at this point, and it was very abusive mentally, very abusive physically. The mental attachment to that person was harder to break away from than any drug ever in my life. So kind of started spiraling out of control with that. I began using more opiates after I had an accident, and I was overprescribed. Continued to abuse those. Had another about 9-month period where I did really well. I was clean, but not addressing all of those underlying issues. So then something really significant happened, and he was arrested, and I was arrested along with him, and I was sentenced to 3 years in the Ohio Reformatory for Women. And I went in, and I was like, this cannot be what my life is going to be. So, I really have to make a change. It's not easy. It's not easy for people in there to always get the treatment or always get the recovery or have those good, positive role models and examples, because you're just really surrounded by a lot of people that are still not trying to do the right thing for whatever reason. Maybe they're just not ready yet, or that's not aligning with their path. So but I was determined. I don't know, something really clicked, and I started seeing a counselor in there, and she was amazing. She was able to really dig deep and pull things out, and and she was like, well, you have PTSD, and I was like, what? That's for people that have been in in wars. There's no way. But she started talking through things with me that I look back at now, and I'm like, how did I think that was ever normal, to be in these really, really horrific, abusive and toxic and dangerous situations? But in my mind, I was, it was just my normal every day-to-day life, and I used drugs to mask those issues. So she worked, on the anxiety, and I worked with her about, different things with the PTSD and first acknowledging that I had it, because it took us many sessions before I was like, okay, you're right. I guess you're the professional. But, you know, it was a lot of work, and it's still a lot of work. So I'm coming up on, or 8 years in recovery, and I still work really hard. Every day is easier, but some days are harder. After I got out, I had the opportunity to either go home or which was I had a great environment, but really nobody in my family understood mental health or addiction or wanted to, so I made a decision to kind of go out on my own and try to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. I never had to buy my own car, never had to pay my own bills, never had to do anything. Here I was, so I worked in a restaurant. I was grateful to have 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, working 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then I found out about peer support after a little while, and I was like, this is amazing. This is what I needed. This is what all the people around me were doing. They just didn't know. I had a phenomenal PO, and I always give him so much credit. And that's where a lot of my passion with the criminal justice system lies, is he didn't have to go the extra mile. He didn't have to, make those extra calls to me. I was a monthly reporting, low risk in their mind, but he took the time out. And so I was like, that's, what I want to do. And I found Thrive, and, it's like when you come in, you're just a family here. If you see everybody meeting, you couldn't tell, who's at the top, who's at the bottom. Everybody's just a team. You can lean on your team. You can call them anytime, to support you. And it's peer support all the way around in your work and in your daily lives. So every single day I get to just do what I love. I get to share my story. It's easier, some days than others, because it can be really trying, but I love it. And I am so grateful for, programs like NAMI, and I'm so grateful for Thrive for giving me the opportunity to, share my story and do things like this, and hopefully, shed a little light at the end of the tunnel for people that are still struggling.
Thank you, Julie. I think we'll move on to Rondé now.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. Wow. I guess I want to just start real briefly about my growing up. Julie kind of touched on some points about childhood. I would call it trauma with me. I know growing up in a family, my mom had 14 kids. I seen my mom drink just constantly all through the day, right? But not only her, my brothers and sisters. So, there was a huge part of my family that was literally alcoholics when I was young. A lot of bad things happened to me also when I was young. Growing up in a family as big as that, we were told, especially people of color, you keep your business in the house and you don't talk about what things goes on. And with me, I was molested. I carried that for a lot of years. And when I was introduced with alcohol, it was a way for me to escape. And when I got a few years older, I started venturing out with a lot of friends that was trying different drugs at that time. I would take my problems out in the street from what was going on in the house. So, I had a lot of childhood trauma. I watched my nephew, I think I was probably 12 or 10. I watched my nephew get killed right in front of me. He got ran over by a car and I couldn't go get him out the street. I carried that also for many years. It caused me to go in and out of different types of environments, such as juvenile, prison, and even took me to the 8th floor up here in Cleveland, where I knew then that I had some mental health issues. All my life as a young youth, I always tried to cope with them and deal with them. And I did that by, trying out drugs and alcohol. I thought that was kind of cool when I grew up. I thought I wasn't gonna be addicted. I'll just say that. But time tells that, I started getting addicted to cocaine real early on in my youth. I think I was probably 17 at the time. And I tried something that took away all the pain. I never forget that. The first time I got high, I literally didn't feel none of the pain no more, from the molestation to me not being able to pick my dead nephew up out the street. My sister was crying. I never forget that day. She was just crying and begging me, Rondé, please go get my son out the street. And I couldn't move. And I carried that a lot of years because I helped raise her son as well. So with that and everything else that was going on in my household, I went into the street. And of course, I didn't have a father growing up, but the street kind of raised me. And I started doing the things that people do in the street. I started running around, stealing things. And like I said, I end up going to juvenile, and then I end up going to prison. Once I started going to prison as a young youth at 18, 19 years old, I figured if I could handle that, there's nothing else that, I couldn't handle. And of course, that took me back and forth to prison. Not only me not dealing with my mental health issue, what I didn't deal with my addiction to drugs or alcohol or anything in that area. So it got real bad. It went from drinking to doing marijuana from that to cocaine to methamphetamines. Once I start trying the methamphetamines, I started becoming literally psych. I mean, literally, there's a lot of things I remember, but there's a lot of things I don't remember due to the fact of the drug I was using. So after that, I'm a suicide survivor also. I literally tried to take my life because I had made up in my mind, I'm not going back to prison and I no longer want to hurt nobody else. So at that time, I was over and done with living. I made a conscious decision that I'm going to literally kill myself. I found out where my heart organ was. I had this great long knife and I missed my heart by 2 inches. So when I came to, I'm in the hospital and they tell me everything's going on. I finally tell somebody that I trust what's really going on with Rondé. And once I did that, I'd never forget, this counsel person told me, he said, Rondé, the most important thing you can do to start healing is to share your story. So that's why I'm on here today, is to only share that story. And hopefully, if someone to that point, or someone will have to get to the point where I was in order to get the help that you need. And of course, I end up coming up here in Cleveland. I end up on the 8th floor. I met this great person, David Duffy, that works for Thrive at that time. And like Justin said earlier, Thrive was not huge then, but the sincerity that they had, which they still have today, from guys like Dave Duffy, as well as Justin, and as well as everybody really that works for Thrive. So anyway, once I start talking to him and I start asking him, like, I'm really tired of living the way I'm living. Is there any help that your organization can do for me? And he told me about this guy named Richard Cheney and some other guys that work for Thrive, and they hooked me up with a peer coach. Well, the peer coach they hooked me up with was Willie Richardson. And finally, I can identify with someone that looks like me, that had a similar story as mine, and was supporting me. And he did that so well that I start opening up more. And I was wondering, like, man, you think I can do this? And of course, I had my peer coach for 2 years because I was really messed up. So as I started sharing all these things with him, and he started confiding in me to let me know that, yes, I can do these things. And he supported me in my recovery, which I began start seeking spirituality as well. I was lacked all in that area. And then I started, reaching into different programs and support groups. And Lord and me know, it worked. I start sharing my story. I start getting better. Of course, I was on medication for a while, and the more I start sharing, the more I start getting this thing off of me, the better I became. So now I know how to do self-care. I know how to support myself as well into this process of my mental health state. And the key for me was talking about it. And I had a psychiatrist, and I had my peer coach, and I had a big support group. And once I start sharing these things, I tell you, it became more easier and easier as today to be able to share the story to help someone. And God knew my heart. My heart intent is, if I could help some person, it'd be all worthwhile, everything I went through. Now I am a peer coach. I'm able to be that person that's sitting and identify with the person that's sitting next to me and allow them to see that if I can go through this and make it, so can they. And Thrive has given me that opportunity to not only speak this, but by a lived experience. When people see me and they watch me, and it's just a blessing to be among people that literally can see this thing in you every day. And they always ask, what do you do? And I always tell them that I keep God first, no matter what. I don't put nothing in my body, and I love people unconditionally. And I support people unconditionally, no matter what that looks like. In recovery, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's mountain climbing, we're going to mountain climb, and whatever it is to that individual, I'm going to support you right to the very end of that, that thing that you need to be supported. So I'm glad that Thrive has given me the opportunity to be so excited. I'm so excited because every day I live is a great day for me, because I know what it feels like to almost miss a day. So now I don't take nothing for granted. I really wake up like this every morning. I am so happy to be part of such an organization that really love and support people like me. And what I do for my self-care, like I say, I go to support groups. I share this thing. It doesn't bound me no more. I don't think that I'm so unique that, you know, I'm the only person that this bad stuff happened to. And now I share and I just care for people, and then hopefully, you know, that they get it. And I have seen it. I witness it with a lot of my peers now, that they have gotten it. They become peer coaches, and it's just an awesome feeling to be able where I'm at today, to be able to share this. And I'm so grateful. I'm really grateful for Thrive to give me the opportunity again to be here with you guys, to be able to share that. So hopefully I help someone. If not, you know, like they say, keep coming back.
Thank you, Rondé. So now we're going to conclude with Justin sharing his story.
Oh boy, Julie, Rondé, fantastic. I could listen to you guys all day. Just miracles. That's what I think of. You know, we're all miracles. A lot of us shouldn't be here for a lot of the stuff that we went through, and how freeing it is to be able to use those experiences, that we made it through all that stuff to help out someone that may be going through that same experience, but we found a way out. So lots of gratitude, lots of gratitude. So I guess my journey started probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old. You know, I remember back, and I used to have really bad headaches, like migraine headaches back then. And after a lot of going to the doctor, you know, my mom would take me because I always had these headaches, and she wasn't sure what was going on. So I remember going and getting all these tests done, and, you know, the allergy tests and all kinds of different studies and stuff like that. And it turns out I was diagnosed with clinical depression at a very young age. And if I think back, I think, well, what was I depressed about? But this wasn't like having the blues, or, you know, I had a down day or something. This is like debilitating clinical depression. You know, so I came from a very small town. We lived out on a farm. I have 2 older brothers. You know, we all kind of have some sort of trauma usually. I've noticed in our early childhood. I'm no different than that. But I didn't really know how to cope with this depression, and I really just didn't feel like I wanted to do this thing called life, even at a very young age. Everything was overwhelming. I was full of fear a lot. Just going to school and trying to interact with other kids, I felt like something was always wrong with me. And that's a difficult way to go throughout life, especially at an early age. So as I get older into my teenage years, I discover alcohol, and I realize this is what I've been missing. This is the magic elixir that fixes everything. It takes away all that fear. It helps with my depression. Any anxiety is completely gone. I feel like I can finally come out and play. It actually made me feel like I could take a breath for once. That's what it does for me, because I have a genetic predisposition that really alcohol affects me differently than it does, say, my two older brothers. So for whatever reason, with the combination of trauma and just where I lived and access to alcohol, that became kind of my solution to just coping with this life. And really, I had a pretty good childhood. I had two loving parents, but for some reason, I just could not feel that love and make any connections with other human beings. So I was into isolating and drinking. And like I said, when I found that alcohol kind of fixed everything that I felt was wrong, I want to drink every single day and do that as much as possible. Obviously, that wasn't possible being 15, 16 years old. But also, like, when I drink, like I said, I drink to feel better. And I don't stop when I usually pick up. So it's difficult for me to get to that right spot where I feel okay, because I'm always going to take it to the wall and keep going. So that's usually what I did. I started getting consequences, DUIs, driving under suspensions, public indecency, or for public drunkenness. All kinds of these things started piling up. And what I do, I don't like to deal with things. I'm a runner. So instead of going to court, I moved to Florida. That seemed like the farthest place I could go. Ohio's the problem. It's always gray and cloudy. It's these people. That's what's making me act like this. So Florida is a fresh start. It's sunny, there's beaches, like that's where I'm going to get this fresh start and everything's going to be good. But again, I have this illness inside of me that wherever I go, I bring it with me. And again, I'm starting to see that with the alcohol and drinking and adding drugs into it, I start to see there's trouble coming. I start crashing cars, and like, I'm not dumb. I can see, like, every time I pick up a drink, like, something bad happens. I end up waking up in the hospital. I don't know how I got there. Just waking up every day thinking I got to get to this certain point to where I feel okay just to get out of bed. It really started to take over my life. And those consequences, I started drinking because of those consequences, but I get the consequences because I drink. So it's this whole kind of vicious cycle that I get myself into. And again, when the heat's on, I run. So I always ran back up to Ohio. I lived in Florida 3 different times. I lived in a lot of South Carolina, just all over the East Coast. Always came back to Ohio with my tail between my legs. And like I said, at this point, people are telling me I have a drinking problem. I have a problem with alcohol. And I always thought, like, you would drink too if you felt how I felt when I didn't drink. You would drink too. And And like I said, it's a very difficult way to live, knowing that this is not good for me, but without it, I did attempt suicide twice. I relate a lot to Rhonda and Julie's stories. You know, a lot of us have had that trauma in early childhood, and then it kind of goes throughout our lives until we get into recovery. So it did get to a point where I was waking up every morning and I was upset that I woke up another day. It was another day of like, here we go again. And so, you know, evidently those days got longer and there's more of them. You know, like I said, I do have some really great people in my life that have had the same experiences, and they're close family members, and they were able to kind of understand me despite all the actions I was taking that would make it look like, you know, I'm a bad person, or I make, you know, the wrong decisions all the time, or I want to be like this. They really understood the disease. And they really helped me out with getting into treatment. So I went to treatment. I think I was about 31 years old at this time. I'm 40 now. And when I went in there, I think I was just completely beaten down enough by all the pain and the years of just trying to live life. I was just exhausted. I was out of options. There was no place I could stay. Even my, you know, close family members, you know, they had to do what they had to do. They started going to their own support groups. So there was boundaries set up to where all my games and manipulation, that was over with. So I was really just left, you know, with no friendly direction. And I finally was out of excuses, you know, and I shut my mouth and I started listening to some of those counselors in that treatment center. And I still get to see some of them to this day. And I thank them from the bottom of my heart, because they really helped save my life. I listened to their words and their guidance and their advice. Some of them had lived experience themselves that they were able to share. I think that makes a world of difference, is having that same lived experience. And being able to openly share that with someone, to instill that hope and motivate them to change, that just makes a world of difference. And it did for me. You know, I do my own sort of recovery, but I respect anybody that's willing to try and just have that willingness to give it a shot, because it's so worth it. From all the trauma that I've been through, all the crash cars, like I said, waking up in a hospital, not knowing how I got there, waking up and not remembering, you know, what city I'm in, to overdoses, to suicide attempts, all that stuff. I get to use all that today as a peer recovery supporter, to let someone know, hey, I know what you're going through. I've been there myself. And like I said, it really helped me, and it helps me in my recovery today. It just cements the fact that, you know, being a person in recovery is something to be proud of, and not worry about, you know, anybody's stigma or attitudes or anything like that. I've been through hell and back, and I'm still here, and I get to use that to help out someone else. I got a really good life today, and I'm so thankful for it and so grateful. So whatever I can do to help out someone else, to just help them on their journey, I try to do that. I try to always be available. And one of the main things that I felt like things really started to turn for me in the beginning is having those counselors that really listen to me. I think sometimes we feel like we're not being heard, and we're just being judged and kind of characterized as, you know, some of those stigmatizing labels. And I think it really helped me when I was ready to really just be honest and get vulnerable and talk about things, that someone was actually there to listen to me. So I try to be that person today. Sometimes it's just about listening and trying to plant a seed. So again, thank you everybody that's on this call for, I recognize some of the names, so I thank you for all that you guys do. You know, we're all in this together, and you know, we're in the trenches, and we're just trying to help out a lot of folks achieve their recovery. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Justin, and thank you, Rhonda and Julie. Just seeing a lot of gratitude being expressed in the chat for all of your sharing, and that you're an inspiration for your recovery. So thanks for sharing. We're going to transition now into some questions that I'm going to pose, and we can all kind of rotate and, you know, seeing who wants to respond to these questions. For those of you that are joining us today, we will have some time for questions of your own. So stay tuned for that. But first, I'm going to pose some questions that will address some important issues that we care about at NAMI and at Thrive as well, I'm sure. So the first question I have, maybe Rhonda can answer this one because this was part of what you shared as being part of your story. What was the role of peer support on your journey, and how did peer support help you?
On my journey, for the first time, I heard someone that looked like me shared their experience, and it seemed like everything that I possibly went through, this individual went through it. Being locked up, coming from a family that you didn't say much about what's going on, and he just identified with everything I was going through, and he didn't judge me. For the first time, I was able to feel free. So when I did that, I shared, and I was like, I really didn't care what he did with it, but I trusted this guy because he told me he was here to support me no matter what that looked like for me. And he did. He listened to me, and he supported me. He made sure I was able to get to the places I needed to get to. At that time, I had to go to see some mental health doctors, which I had to because I was really in bad shape. And like I said, I start sharing my story with the psychiatrist, and they start telling me that the best medicine they can possibly give me was for me to start sharing this thing, because that was keeping me hostage for so many years, in and out. So for the first time, I had someone that was right there listening to me and identifying for me.
Thank you. And for all of you, anyone can chime in on this one. How has being a peer supporter yourself aided in your wellness and in your recovery?
I can go. I just remember when I first, I did some volunteering as peer support when I first started at Thrive. I was like, you know, listening to peers talk through their problems. And it's really important, you know, like Rhonda said, for you to just be able to listen to people, but for people to just listen to you. And when you become a peer supporter, you know, you're really tasked with listening, being able to listen to people. But it was so interesting how, you know, some of the issues that I was going through, my peer was going through similar issues, and while they're just talking through their problems out loud, you know, it's helping me. And then I get to see, you know, people reach these goals, and to some people it's like these are little goals, opening a bank account or seeing someone get their driver's license for the first time at 25 years old, but it's huge steps for people. I mean, for so long, these mental health, you know, illnesses have held people back and, you know, made you feel sometimes like you're not worthy of having, you know, even these little things. And so, you know, it just makes you forever grateful every single day, because, you know, you can realize where you've been, but also where you are now, all, you know, all at the same time.
Thank you, Julie. Anyone else?
Simply,
yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, Yeah, that was great, Julie. I agree. Simply for me, it's just about giving back, right? There was people early and well, all throughout my life, but especially in early recovery for me that really helped me out. And, you know, they always answered their phone no matter what time of night it was. They were always able to just sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk to me, take me out to eat when I didn't have any food. Just people in my life that were kind of unofficially peer supporters, but just people that were supporting me and, you know, really were holding my hand when I couldn't walk on my own 2 feet. It was really crucial for me to have people that I could always talk to, and no matter what it was about, you know, they were there to listen with no judgment, and just really in a loving and caring, compassionate way. And I want to be that person today because I know what it did for me. So I want to be able to be that person for someone else. So that's what I try to do today is just simply give back, you know, because I have a lot of gratitude for where I'm at today. And it's because of those folks early on.
Did you want to share something, Rondé?
Yeah, just briefly, just to touch bases, just a little bit on that. When I first got my peer coach, he was so uncomfortable of going to church with me. And it was just, I could smile about it today because I used to sit over there and look at him and I was like, wow, this guy is willing to go to whatever length necessary for me. Because at that time I was really.
Oh, you
Oh,
muted,
you
Rondé.
muted.
It was just like, I need something that's greater than me. And this is all I know. But to see him over there squirming and worming, I was like, oh my God. And he kept going every Sunday. And of course, I start going to meetings and I start doing other things. And I was like, wow, this thing is real. This Thrive thing is serious. And he just didn't leave it one day. It was
Oh,
bring it to the table. He would do some comfortable stuff, you know, like we go to the homeless. I wanted to always identify how low
oh.
that moment, and he would go that point. So, and it was awesome.
Thank you. So next question is, how has stigma about mental health and about substance use disorder affected your journey in your recovery?
So I would say, you know, it's interesting. Doctors, I think that's where I've experienced it just in my personal experience. You know, you go to find a primary care physician that you've maybe you've let some things go for some years and or you're in a situation where you can't see, you know, your own primary care physician. And I probably bounced around to like 3 different ones before I found the one that was just like, you know, okay, you know, let's figure out, you know, what you have to look at, what we have to address, you know, sharing information, being able to be open with them. She's always checking, you know, on me, but that was a big thing too. It was a struggle to find a doctor that I was comfortable with because of the stigma, and in areas where you feel like people shouldn't have that stigma, they do. And then just in general in life, the world, you know, having a job and people are like, oh, you know, that person's a felon, or that person's probably not reliable because they used to have a drug problem, or they need a mental health day, or, you know, and in reality, it affects so many people, and in so many other ways it plays out that we just don't recognize. But, you know, there was some stigma behind that, but I had some really great people around me that just encouraged me to be, you know, forthcoming and share always and be honest when I was doing job interviews. And I guess by the grace of God, I always came across like some really amazing people that were just like, okay, you know, I understand and gave me a chance, just like Thrive did. And, you know.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on that?
I will real briefly. It make me start speaking out on, you know, when people look at me and I start talking, they don't think, you know, I'm a person that I'm dual diagnosis, right? I suffer from mental health illness as well as addiction. But what I do to maintain my recovery, you know, like I said, I have a support group and I talk about this thing only by the grace of God that I'm not on medication because of the years that the work I put in. That's the kicker. I had a doctor that believed in me and he told me, he was like, look, we got to go down on this medication, Rondé, because you're articulate. You just got to start helping somebody. And when that diagnosis came out, I'm like, I'm not literally as bad as I think no more. So when that doctor shared that with me, I knew then that the stigma was different now. It was like he wasn't trying to keep me on this medication. He knew there was something in me that can go and be a light to someone else. And that's what I do. I am so grateful every morning I get that opportunity to be a light. That's all for someone that's suffering from some of the conditions that I was suffering from. And what I do to recover may not be the same thing someone else has to do, but recovery is possible.
Thank you. Recovery is possible. That's a good slogan for today. So our next question is, what does the real life practice of self-care look like for you?
I can go. So I guess for me is I always put my recovery first, because if I'm not doing my recovery, I'm going to be no use to anyone else, right? So I always say, like, what I do for my own recovery is like the meat and the potatoes, and then what I get to do on a day-to-day basis to make a living is just the icing on the cake, right? And it all kind of involves giving back and trying to help others no matter what. So that's what I get to do. I do sometimes, you know, indulge in a slice of cheesecake or, you know, a movie night or something like that. But for the most part, I'm always available. My phone rings a lot and I always pick it up because me helping others helps me to get out of my own self. And that's what I need to do most of the time. So like I said, there's layers to my recovery, but I got to make sure my recovery comes first.
Yeah, and just kind of to echo that, what Justin says, and I see this a lot, like I go into courts or drug courts and I see people and they're like, I'm working and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And sometimes I'll say to their probation officers, like, what are they doing for self-care? And I see it with women and men too, that just feel like, you know, I've neglected my children or my family and I don't deserve to do nice things. I saw women all the time like get their nails done or their hair done or, you know, get a massage or whatever. And I'm like, those are very important things and you are deserving. You do deserve these things. And as little as it might seem, you know, take the time out to do things like that because it's just about loving yourself and finding that, you know, place it within you to say, hey, I do deserve this. Yes, I did this, but I can't hold on to, you know, this. So, you know, keep doing this to myself my whole life. You know, I Justin says that about work, but I always tell people that, you know, there's lots of different elements to a lot of what we do at Thrive, a lot of us, but so many utility or talk with probation or do an event or something. That's my self-care. Like that's when I'm like out, you know, happy in my element. And I'm like, this is showing me where I've come from, you know, I lay it all out there on the table for the people there, let them know like, hey, I've been there and I just want to help. Me and so many other people are here to help you, pull you out of this place. And it just, I'll come home exhausted, but refreshed. And, you know, that's my job, is my self-care. I mean, in so many ways.
Thank you both for responding to that question. I want to move us now to a few questions which will be more, maybe even more helpful for our audience, which are, what do you think families should know about what it is like to live with a mental health condition?
Yeah. Well, I think the next question he was
through. I'm glad that I had a sister that's still here with me today. She's here in Cleveland. And, you know, I was all the way down in Portsmouth with my mental health issues going on. And, you know, she's in church real heavy. She's been in church all her life. But for the first time she heard me, when I told her, I said, but you don't understand. A lot of stuff happened to me. And I started telling her about my molestation and all this other stuff. And then when she stopped and said, it happened to me, come up here and get some help, I was like, thank God she didn't hit me with the Jesus piece or any of that stuff. And when she told me to come up here and talk to these doctors, for the first time, I was like, wow, somebody in my family trying to understand who I am. And, you know, this is not the person I am that I became in and out of penitentiaries, you know, ziggity boo, because of all this trauma that happened to me. So I am grateful to this day. Me and her have a great relationship. And now what I do, I just speak on it. Now people get to know me. They're like, you ain't been in prison in 5-6 years. So I was like, yeah, this is who I am. And this is what kept me hostage was. And now they know. So it's a blessing to be able to share with my family. My family's huge anyway. So now they get it now. They're like, wow, keep talking about it.
I can go. I think, you know, it's interesting. I think the word that comes to mind is be open-minded. You know, I don't clinically diagnose, but I notice things in other people that are, you know, similar traits or similar situations that I went through. And maybe if people would have been aware and asked questions. I had a family that I think unintentionally enabled so much of my behavior. But in that, had they had the education or the knowledge to really just provide me with maybe some other, you know, resources or things like that, then, you know, it would have really been helpful. But in saying that, a lot of people, a lot of us with our mental health issues, we already harbor a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, a ton of it ourselves. So we don't need other people, you know, to give any of that to us. We already have so much of that. So I think sometimes it's just asking questions like, you know, there's people in my family that may never accept or understand things, and that's okay because I'm in a space where I'm okay. But if I had something to say to other families, I would say, you know, ask those questions or take what somebody's saying seriously. Or even if you say, wow, this is not a big deal, why are they acting like this? Or, you know, why is someone staying in this relationship? You just never know. So ask the questions or just be supportive. And if you can't, maybe help point them in the right direction to someone who can.
Yeah, so I'll just add, I think to let families know that, you know, recovery is a process, and it's a lifelong process. I think communication is key. Julie and Rhonda talked about that. I think talking about things and being open about things. For me in my recovery, I'm transparent with my family. Also, my family used some of the resources that are out there to be able to kind of cope with me and what I was going through. So there are resources out there. There's support groups for families. So I would utilize some of those as well. Matt, you're back.
Yes, so sorry. Total internet outage using my hotspot on my iPhone. Thank God for improvisational technology. So, but fortunately we were prepared. You know, you all knew what your next question was. So the final question that we have before we open it up for our audience is, what would you like professionals to know about what it is like to live with a mental health condition? And this can refer to healthcare professionals, therapists, counselors, teachers, law enforcement. What would you like folks that are involved in professional work where they may encounter individuals with mental illness? What should they know?
As a peer supporter, I get to work in a lot of health systems and a lot of different environments, but I think sometimes we are a very valuable workforce, folks in recovery. Very valuable. We bring a lot to the table. And I think a lot of it is just that empathy piece. You know, we have a tremendous amount of empathy for patients, clients, just other folks in the community. And we also have that lived experience piece that a lot of folks, even if they do have it, you know, they may not be in a role or position where they're able to share that. So we bring a lot of also resources to the table as well. So we're very valuable in the sense that, you know, we deserve a seat at the table, whether it's a behavioral health treatment team or whatever it may be, because like I said, we've been through hell and back, and we're able to share that today to help someone else. And that's very valuable, is that life experience.
I would just say I actually had a pretty positive, didn't feel positive at the time, but a positive interaction with a law enforcement officer. Somebody had reported that they saw myself and my boyfriend at a gas station, and he was being abusive physically. And the officer might have not followed all protocols when he was pulling us over, and it is the arrest that led to, you know, the long time that I was incarcerated. But he pulled me in his car. He said, you know, I feel like you're not safe. I actually had known him for a long time. I'd grown up with him. And he said, you know, is there anything I can do? Is there anything you would like to tell me? Of course, upon further investigation, other things unfolded, but he really asked those questions. And I think that's true with anyone in any position like that. Maybe if you're unaware of how to ask those questions, there can be education provided. I mean, there's tons of resources and organizations and people that are willing to provide that training, but asking those questions, as little as they may be, or just, are you okay? Is there anything I can do? Is there something, you know, is there something that I can do to help you? Because that really can be a turning point for someone. And you have the power in those positions, in healthcare, in law enforcement, you know, probation, first responders, all of those things. You have that power to say, you know, hey, like, what can I do to try to help? So use that power, you know, to benefit someone and possibly save someone's life.
You're on mute, Rondé. You're still muted.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just want to follow up real quick on that because, you know, I peer a lot in East Cleveland, and sometimes I venture out to different places here in Cleveland, but I see it on a daily basis. And I always approach it with care and conscience because I know I was that individual. And the sad thing about it is, you know, I hope and pray that law enforcement as well as all the people out there in power, that they identify this as well. Because when you take mental health and you put alcohol and drug on top of that, you got a bomb. So if you don't know how to, dissect that bomb, and you just go in there and try to get it, something's gonna happen. So every day I'm able to just be a people person that I am. My approach is always righteous. I don't come with authority or making you seem less than. I identify with you, especially when I see the people out here, and I let them know that there's hope. As soon as they look at me and they say, why? How do you know? Because I'm hope. I'm that hope. I was here. I was just here a couple years ago. And then they listen, then that's the attraction. So, then I'm able to get them to thrive and get them some support. And, even if they got to go to detox or a doctor, get prescribed Medicaid. So I'm grateful that I'm that voice, that I'm able to make sure my approach is real, where people will receive it.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories and for responding to these questions with really heartfelt answers. I do want to open it up now for comments and for questions from anyone in our audience. Feel free to put those in the chat, and I will answer, and I will ask them of our panelists. I do also want to let you know that there is a survey for an evaluation for this program. Just wanting to receive some honest feedback from you about your experience hearing our panelists' stories, and if this information was helpful for you in understanding issues related to mental health, substance use disorder, coping skills, and stigma and help seeking. So I did put the link for that survey in the chat, and if you could all open that up and complete that, it's anonymous, should take 2 or 3 minutes. We would really appreciate that. So yeah, at this point, complete our survey, and any questions or comments you would like to leave for our panelists before we conclude. Okay, I see a couple questions. So here's one from Kathleen, which says, how would you like the medical world to better address and support those with mental health and substance abuse issues, for example, in routine medical appointments? It's a good question.
I would say, I know because I spoke to this a little bit earlier, I bounced around to my primary care physicians until I found the right one. And just every time I go in, even if it's just, if I have a cold, or I, of course, have to go in for a COVID test or something like that, she's always like, just how are you doing? How's your mental health? How are you taking care of yourself? She really takes out time to ask extra questions. I think it's not just always on point, on the subject of what I'm even in for, and then always routinely provides resources just as as an extra precaution. So I think that's a big thing. Just, essentially it boils down to just taking extra time, maybe a little bit off topic, and then just listening, finding things to listen for. Like, does this person, are they their normal bubbly self? Is Rondé smiling? He's not. So maybe there's something wrong. If he's not smiling, there's something wrong. So just being aware of people's, normal behaviors, or if you're not dealing with them on a day-to-day basis, like a healthcare professional might not be, just asking questions personally, not just related to the current health situation.
That's a great response. Next question is from Julie, which says, she's asking, as a family member, do you have advice for how to be there for a young adult who is very private and often responds to questions with, I don't want to talk about it?
For me, like, I would try to get them, because my mom, she didn't know what was going on with me. Like I said, when I would have these migraines, and and I didn't know why I was having them either. So I'm sure I probably said, I don't know, or I don't want to talk about it, or, you know, everything's fine when I wasn't feeling fine. But she would, you know, she really cared and was loving enough to not let it be like that. And she continued to take me to the pediatrician to try to figure out what was going on, because I didn't really know how to express some of my feelings at that time. I didn't know how to, you know, really tell her. Some of the times she would just ask, like, what's wrong? And I just thought, I don't know what's wrong, but nothing feels right. And that's a difficult thing for, especially an adolescent, to try to express that. So I think seek professional help, like my mom did. That was what worked best for me.
Thanks, Justin. That's a good question and a good response. I'm just seeing other comments in the chat, just expressing gratitude and appreciation for all of you being so open with your stories and with your responses. Oh, got another question. This is from Cora, who says, one of my biggest frustrations is that my son, who has both mental health and substance abuse issues, is unwilling to admit he has issues and blames others for his woes. Any comments?
I think we can probably, like, we're all unmuted. I think we probably can all relate to being that in that stage. I know for me, like I said, I was always pointing fingers at other people. You know, I wouldn't take responsibility for any of my actions. It was always, I always had an excuse or reason. And then, you know, when I got caught or something, it was always, well, I'm going to do it differently next time. You know, it was very difficult. I think I really hurt the people in my life that loved me the most, which is difficult for me to even think of. But you know, where I'm at today with it, I look back and it was quite a journey. You know, like I said, there's support groups for families. My mom would go to Family Anonymous and Al-Anon and things like that seemed to really help her, which in turn that helped me. So that's what I would suggest. It's a difficult position to be in, though, when you feel like you're helpless and you can't help them, but you can help yourself, which in turn will help them.
I think too, it's, in my case, it was, things were so brushed under the rug. So mine was lying or making excuses for fear of how I would be perceived or what the outcome would be. And sometimes it's just reassuring people over and over, because so many of us do that. You know, that's what we do. It's easier to blame others. It's hard, you know, to own up, especially when you've made mistakes. But it's maybe just, you know, echoing, of course, everything Justin said, but just reassurance of, you know, I'm just trying to understand you, or I'm just, you know, the outcome isn't as bad as what you might think, or it is bad, but at some point in your life, you know, you do have to face that. So I think, and, you know, like I said, I just think that was the biggest thing for me. How am I going to be perceived? Because image in, you know, the environment I was in was such a big thing. And you don't want someone to perceive you as weak or to perceive you as a failure or, you know, anything else. So I think that's the biggest thing too, just constant reassurance. Not that you might not be doing that, but it just, you know, constantly doing it anyways, because it takes some of us a long time to realize that we, you know, we're the issue, or even, you know, figure out what the issue is within us. And
Yeah, I know real briefly, hurt people. And, you know, when I was hurt, I wanted someone else to hurt. But when I became ownership of what was going on with me, you know, my sister told me that, like, we don't know who you are. And when I had the opportunity to express that with her, to let her know, like, I don't even know who I am, you know, and I started letting her know, like, you know, I was faulting you guys for my molestation because I thought you guys knew, you know, and I was just fault finding and everything because I just didn't want to take ownership of the part I played in it, was not exposing it. And I had to carry that thing for like 15 years. And it cost me a lot of jail institution and almost death. So now I'm able to identify it, like Julian was saying, like when you can see this thing, like, you know, we don't take that for granted now. We don't allow people to come to the table a lot of excuses. We know when you're ready, and you cannot pass, you know, you can't just keep doing that. It's not going to work like that.
Yeah, thank you all for your responses. I'm also just seeing, you know, comments in here that you're all an inspiration for those of us that are on this call. Really appreciative that, you know, we're able to recognize, celebrate, honor Mental Illness Awareness Week by celebrating stories of recovery and offering folks in the community that care about this issue some more information from the perspective of lived experience and how we can better support people in our lives affected by mental health issues. So just a reminder once more to please complete the evaluation for the presentation. I just dropped the link in the chat there. You know, I do have the recording for this webinar. Unfortunately, due to my internet outage, there might be a little gap in the recording, but we'll make available to you what we are able to later in the week. And just want to offer just some final appreciation to our panelists for being part of this program. Thank you to Thrive for partnering on this event with us, and hope everyone has a great week and enjoys the beautiful weather if you're located here in Cleveland. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much.